Disney, live-action remakes. As many of you know, these two terms often don't mix well. One major criticism I always point out in my reviews is how Disney seems to completely forget what made the original special in the first place. So after several failed attempts from the Mouse House, maybe it's time for DreamWorks to take a shot. And their first big swing, the one that's almost guaranteed to be a trend now, because sadly, live-action remakes aren't going anywhere, is How to Train Your Dragon. So what can I say? Did DreamWorks do a better job, or did they also suck like Disney? Did this live-action remake live up to, or even exceed its animated origin? Hi, I'm Sydney, and here's what I think of 2025 How to Train Your Dragon. Okay, let me be blunt. I like the remake. Like, I genuinely enjoyed it. It was visually stunning, the nostalgic soundtrack hit all the right notes, and it truly recaptured that original magic. But what really stood out to me is the spot-on casting. Mason Thames as Hiccup is almost perfect. He captured Hiccup's voice, that endearing awkwardness, the dry sarcasm, and all his mannerisms. I absolutely love him. The only problem is he's a bit too tall and honestly way too good looking for the scrawny Hiccup we know. Which, let's be real, isn't actually a problem. But yes, I definitely want to see more of Mason. I'm looking forward to his future projects. Then we have Nico Parker as Astrid. At first, I had my doubts because of course they just had to race swap one of our beloved characters. But she actually did a good job at demonstrating Astrid's strength and fierceness. Gabriel Howell, the actor for Snotlout, also crushed it. He reminded me so much of Flash Thompson from Spider-Man. I actually thought they were the same actor for a second. And if Tough Nut was a real person, he would absolutely look and sound like Harry Trevaldwin. However, Rough Nut and Fish Legs didn't stand out to me as much. Also, did anyone else notice that they turned so many original blonde characters into redheads and brunettes? Does Hollywood have something against blondes now? But of course, the best decision DreamWorks made was bringing Gerard Butler back to play Stoic. We were already so used to Butler voicing Stoic, so seeing him portray in live action just brought back so many memories. Overall, the cast did a tremendous job at portraying their respective characters, which is a massive hurdle cleared for any live action adaptation. However, despite all that praise, the inescapable truth is this. The film is almost to a fault, a shot-for-shot recreation of the original animated classic. And I'm honestly conflicted. On one hand, the reason I enjoyed this remake so much is because it transported me back to when I first watched the original. Like that iconic scene when Hiccup is about to touch Toothless for the first time. I think they either used the same or a very similar soundtrack for that moment. Either way, the live-action remake brought me back right to that emotional moment. On the other hand, that immediately begs the question, is this the new standard of a good live-action remake? Does good now simply mean identical? Now, I know what you're thinking. Sydney, you complain when they change things, and you complain when they make it shot for shot. What do you even want? And my answer is simple. I don't want live-action remakes at all. Or at least not like this. Take Disney's live-action Cinderella for example. All the essentials are there. The evil stepmother, Cinderella being transformed into a beautiful princess by her fairy godmother, Cinderella losing her iconic glass slipper at the stroke of midnight, and the prince finally finding Cinderella. This live action told the original story without having to present it shot for shot. Disney managed to flesh out Cinderella, Prince Charming, and even her stepmother without ruining the original magic. It proved that you can adapt a classic while still bringing something new to the table. That's why for me, 2015 Cinderella is still the best Disney live action adaptation. I really need to review this movie. But beyond that, the reason I feel so strongly about this is because when studios greenlight live-action versions of beloved animated classics, they're basically sending the message that the live-action format is better or more serious than the original. It's like saying the original wasn't good enough or it's not real cinema until it's rendered with human actors. It's a sad reality that many people are more inclined to watch a film if it's live action because they still believe animation is just for kids. And that's just not the case. I mean, hello, it's obvious that the original How to Train Your Dragon is already a perfectly well-written story because DreamWorks decided to do a shot-for-shot remake with only a few minor tweaks. The story's already that good on its own. But speaking of minor tweaks, although the live-action film is largely a shot-for-shot copy, they did make some minor changes. I mean, they kinda had to, right? Otherwise, what would be the point? Some of these changes didn't have any significant effect on the plot of the story. For example, instead of Toothless rolling in the grass, in the live action, he sneezes because of dandelions. It's a small moment, but it's still a change. They also didn't show the tiny dragons cozying up to Hiccup, which was a little sad because that scene really reinforced the idea that dragons aren't so bad after all. Also giving him the idea that dragons aren't fireproof inside. However, I did like how they added more depth to Snotlout's relationship with his dad. That explains why he's always showing off. It's because he genuinely longs for attention and recognition from his dad. That was a small but good addition. Adding Astrid's desire to be chief also made a lot of sense. And this isn't one of those generic changing damsels in distress into girl bosses situations. Astrid has always been hard-headed and a natural leader. Like in the second movie, when Stoic was pressuring Hiccup to become the next chief, I actually thought Astrid could do it instead. But I'm glad Hiccup eventually took charge. It showed his character growth. Oops, spoiler alert. But the best change they made was fixing the alpha dragon concept. The concept of an alpha dragon having control over others was actually introduced in the second movie, but an alpha dragon was already present in the first. So fixing that inconsistency in the remake was actually a really good move for the overall mythology. So after everything I've pointed out about the film, my genuine enjoyment, its nearly shot-for-shot remake with those few minor changes, and my concern for this constant trend of turning animated classics into live-action films. We have to ask the question, what was the point of making this live action? Was it just a nostalgic cash grab? A way to fix minor inconsistencies? Or a new way to tell a well-written story? Whatever the reason, I'm honestly still glad this film was made. When we were watching the film, I heard so much laughter around me. And that's when I realized, for many families, this live-action film might be the first time they've ever seen How to Train Your Dragon. I came into theater wanting to analyze and compare, but most families came in to simply experience a wonderful story. One reason I love How to Train Your Dragon so much is that DreamWorks was never afraid to get real. That scene where Hiccup lost his foot was such an emotional moment. And I'm really glad I got to relive that again in the live action. And honestly, even though the live action was a shot-for-shot remake, I'm glad that a new generation, or even those who just prefer live action, still got to journey through Berk like this. So speaking of films, there have been so many movies recently I've wanted to watch and review. Lilo and Stitch, Ballerina, Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning, and Karate Kid Legends. At one point, all of them were in theaters at the same time. I'd love to review all of them, but sadly, watching everything in theaters isn't cheap. So I might have to wait for them to hit streaming platforms. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this review, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more movie thoughts. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!